Okay, so I think we're just going to kick off. Now, unfortunately, one of our speakers, I believe, is running a bit late, so we might have to do a bit of a rejig of the agenda, but I'm just keeping an eye out and I can't see him in yet. But we've got um, 4 other speakers with us today, so we can definitely kick off. People coming in. Great. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to start this event by acknowledging that I am hosting this webinar on the lands of the Bunurong people, and I respectively acknowledge the custodianship of Bunurong elders, recognising that they and their ancestors stewarded these lands and their diverse creatures. Sorry, I just was checking that I was actually off mute. I respectively acknowledge the custodianship of the Bunurong elders, recognising that they and their ancestors stewarded these lands and their diverse creatures sustainably for tens of thousands of years. I also wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you are today and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be joining us in the audience today. I would also like to acknowledge Sustainability Victoria, who has funded the Victoria Unboxed project that we are talking about today through the Circular Economies Fund. My name is Beth Chizelsky, and I'm one of the project managers at Sustain, the Australian Food Network. For those of you who haven't heard about Sustain, we are a healthy and sustainable food systems charity, and we champion the transition to healthy, socially just and sustainable food systems. It's really great to see so many people joining us today that are interested in the issue of waste in our food system. And we are here to specifically talk about reducing packaging waste in short, fresh produce supply chains. Now, when we talk about short, fresh produce supply chains, we mean produce that has minimal logistical steps, distances, or intermediary bodies to get from the ground and into mouths. So this could include sales directly from farms to restaurants or consumers within the same geographic region, or in the case of Natoora Melbourne, a fresh produce distributor and one of our key project partners. This is an example of an organisation who sources produce from small farms in Victoria and distributes them to hospitality venues across Melbourne. Sustain has been working on the Victoria Unboxed project for the last 12 months, and this project aims to support actors in short, fresh produce supply chains to reduce packaging waste. The project has 2 key components. So first of all, as I've mentioned, partnering with Natoora Melbourne, a fresh produce distributor, to pilot a reusable crate program based on research and stakeholder consultation, with an aim to overcome some of the key challenges to moving from single-use to reusable packaging. And the second is we've been conducting case study research with 4 farms employing successful packaging waste reduction measures. And we are very lucky to have 4 speakers joining us today who have been involved in the project to share their findings and perspectives around saving packaging waste. And I just need to quickly do a double check of if we have someone in the audience yet, which we don't. So we're going to have just a little bit of a change of order. So we were going to have David Leonard from Sustainability Victoria speaking first, but he hasn't joined us. So I'm going to move him to the end of the agenda. And we're first going to hear from Sustain's project coordinator on this project, Angus Hallett, who will be sharing an overview of the Victoria Unboxed project and some of the key learnings and outcomes. After Angus, we have Mark Leahy from Natoora Melbourne, who will share a little bit about Natoora and their experience participating in the reusable crate pilot project and their efforts to reduce waste in their supply chain. After this, we will hear from 2 case study organisations from the project. So we have Eve Fraser joining us from Farm Raiser and Terry Emselle from Sunnybank Farms. And then finally, after all the speakers, we'll have an opportunity for anyone in the audience to ask questions. We expect the event will finish up a bit earlier, probably around 6:15, unless you have a lot of questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Angus to share a little bit about the Victoria Unboxed project.
Perfect. Thanks, Beth. And thanks everyone who's joined us today. As Beth has mentioned, my name's Angus. I am the project coordinator for the Victoria Unboxed project, which we've been lucky to undertake this year thanks to funding from Sustainability Victoria. Primary objectives we've set out with this project was reducing the volume of packaging waste, specifically cardboard, wax cardboard, and polystyrene waste in short fresh produce supply chains. And to do this, we partnered with Natoora Melbourne, and I'll walk you through a bit of the process we undertook and the results that we've found through the project. So packaging waste in Australia is a significant problem or environmental challenge, with around 86% of packaging currently produced and sold being marketed as recyclable or compostable, but only about 16% of it actually getting recycled or composted. This is due primarily to lack of markets for the recycled products, but also a general lack of awareness around the effective use of recycling systems. As I'm sure most of you in the room are aware, food waste is also a major environmental challenge, with 7.6 million tonnes a year ending up in landfills in Australia and contributing significantly to greenhouse gas emissions at around 3% of Australia's total footprint. A study from by RMIT into community perceptions around food waste revealed that there's a general oversight by consumers in the role that packaging can play in actually reducing food waste, noting that the emissions profile of food waste is far greater than that of packaging waste. It's important to note or to consider that there's a broader environmental impact of packaging waste in terms of environmental pollution. So it's not just about the emissions. There's also obviously the impacts it can have on marine life and all other environments for that matter. Research is clear, though, that an effective balance should be sought between packaging waste and food waste, whereby both can be minimised without increasing the other. So what's being done about packaging waste in Australia? As part of the National Waste Action Plan, the federal government has set the national waste targets, which were intended to be achieved by 2025. The targets include the phase out of problematic and unnecessary single-use plastics. Sorry, David, I'm just going to through mute. So the targets include the phase out of problematic and unnecessary single-use plastic packaging, and are also focused on ensuring that packaging is reusable or recyclable or compostable, and is being managed as such, as it's not currently. Unfortunately, the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation, or APCO, as the lead organisation on these targets, has said last year that they're not expecting these goals to be met by 2025 as originally planned. There has been some progress, but they're just not going to get to the full objectives. Australia's wholesale markets facilitate the distribution of around 50% of Australia's fresh produce, and with it, a large volume of produce packaging. They serve as vital nodes connecting farms and distributors to retail and hospitality businesses. The significant challenges for these markets, or that these markets face, is in their reliance on single-use packaging, due largely to the complexity and diversity of their supply chains and number of businesses involved in them. And the environmental impact is significant, with vast amounts of polystyrene, cardboard, and plastic being used once and then disposed of. As the providers of infrastructure only, though, the market authorities have a limited influence over the use of packaging on their sites, and are instead working to improve waste management through other programs. For example, the Melbourne market, which we visited as part of this program, our project, is focusing their efforts towards ensuring effective recycling systems are in place for the waste that is produced on their site through an on-site transfer station and recycling plant. There's some examples of reusable packaging schemes in the market, such as CHEP's reusable plastic crate scheme, which offers a sustainable alternative by supplying, collecting, and washing reusable crates for its customers. But this certainly isn't the norm. The prevalence of packaging appears to be a somewhat different story, though, in short supply chains, like farm direct to hospitality or consumer, with many farmers in these supply chains having already adopted reusable plastic crates, recognising both the environmental benefits and also the longer term cost savings when compared to disposable alternatives. Despite the obvious benefits of these programs, little work had been done previously to quantify the benefits or document the effectiveness of the process, and that's where the Victoria Unboxed project comes in. So the project aimed to support actors in short produce supply chains to reduce packaging waste. As mentioned, the project was specifically focused on cardboard, wax cardboard, and polystyrene packaging. By partnering with Natoora Melbourne, we were able to pilot a crate reuse program to reduce waste in their supply chain. The project was undertaken through a comprehensive methodology, starting with desktop research to understand the state of waste generation in Australia, as I've just spoken about, as well as identifying the challenges and barriers to widespread use of reusable packaging schemes. This included conducting a life cycle assessment, comparing the production emissions of plastic crates against single-use boxes. It found that a plastic crate only needs to be used 6 times before the production emissions per use work out to less than that of using a cardboard box. Also 6 cardboard boxes. A series of stakeholder consultation was then conducted with a wide range of stakeholders across Natura's supply chain, including Natoora themselves, to understand the challenges that they face in the use of existing reuse schemes, but also produce packaging more generally. We did a waste audit too of Natura's existing waste disposal system and delivery system to understand where the areas were for improvement. And through that, we found that through their existing crate scheme, they were already delivering 31% of their orders in crates. But through the consultation with farmers and hospitality venues, it was quite clear that the best case for an effective crate use scheme required sort of two quite distinct systems, considering the difference in challenges faced by each of them. So based on the stakeholder consultation, several common challenges were identified. Cost was flagged. Sorry, that's the one. Cost was flagged as a major barrier to implementing a crate reuse program. However, this would be overcome through this project with Sustain purchasing all of the crates required. Concerns about the impact of produce quality were identified for certain produce, such as salad leaves and other delicate produce, as well as challenges with the return of crates. Based on the challenges identified, the crates chosen for transport between farms and Natoora were solid plastic crates, which were purchased secondhand from the bulb industry at $5 each. The crates were considered end of life by that industry and made available for purchase secondhand. And at $5 each, they were relatively low cost and were consistent with the crates already in use by Natoora. The low cost of the crates made them more accessible for farmers who may wish to purchase additional crates in the future, while also enabling the purchase of a large volume for the pilot scheme. 800 of the crates were purchased with the intention of flooding Natoura's supply chain with the crates to ensure there was sufficient supply to operate the pilot scheme. The farm crates didn't have a surface suitable for attaching a label. However, we did trial spray painting the crates, which was found to be quite effective. Although due to the volume that we bought, their low cost and the existing use of the same type of crate, we did decide not to label the crates, instead adopting Natoura's existing crate tracking process. The process simply required farmers to advise how many crates were used in an order before delivery, and Natoora would ensure that an equal number of empty crates were available to be exchanged. with the order. So the key challenges identified by hospitality venues was a lack of space to store the bulky crates when ready for collection. Natoora identified some additional challenges to crate use in hospitality venues, including mixing up of crates with the same crates being used by several suppliers, meaning Natoora would end up collecting crates belonging to other suppliers, or other suppliers would end up collecting theirs. Another challenge, though, was in the long-term use of the crates for storage by some hospitality venues. Without the crates being clearly identifiable as belonging to Natoora, this could make them difficult to get back at times. The crates chosen for farms were inappropriate for use in hospitality venues, considering these challenges, primarily their bulk, which would lead to continued storage challenges. So an alternative was sought, with foldable plastic crates being selected. The foldability of the crates overcomes the storage limitations identified by the stakeholders, while also fitting easily into delivery vans while full of orders. The bright colour of the crates also makes them easily identifiable to Natoора's drivers upon collection. And then to further support this, we labelled the crates with both Natoora and project branding. At $27 each, the hospitality crates were significantly more expensive than the farm crates, making effective tracking a priority. So a digital tracking system for the crates through a barcode system was trialled, but found to be ineffective due to the additional time it added to deliveries, as well as the high annual cost of the system being a likely barrier to its use in future unfunded schemes. So the farm crates were originally rolled out to 5 of Natoора's supplier farms, and feedback was sought from the farms after having used the crates for several months. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, highlighting a significant reduction in operational stress, especially during the peak seasons. This was mostly due to the consistent supply of crates, removing the need for the farmers to seek out and purchase additional crates to maintain their quantity of orders during these busy times. Natoora also attempted to use the crate system with one of their suppliers who delivers produce to them via the Melbourne market. Crates were provided to the supplier for the delivery of orders, but because Natoora has no permanent presence at the market and limited space to store crates for exchange, the system proved unfeasible, basically. Leaving crates for exchange in the small space Natoora does have left them open to theft. And this really just highlights a need for a more systematic approach to reuse schemes in supply chains, such as the wholesale market, those longer supply chains. A slow diminishment of the crate stockpiles at Natoora was experienced over the busy summer period, meaning there was at times insufficient crates for a one-to-one exchange with the farms when doing deliveries or collection of produce. The depletion was primarily attributed to a couple of factors, but one of them being the long-term use for the crates for storage. They're obviously very handy on farms, and certain products can be stored in them for long periods of time, which is a good result, but obviously takes them out of that supply chain for a period of time and offline for deliveries. At the same time, though, Natoora was also still delivering most of their hospitality orders in these crates due to a delay in us getting the new green crates. So they were having to balance the supply of crates between farms and hospitality when both were seeing higher volumes of orders. If the pilot was repeated, we'd probably maintain a larger reserve of crates at Natoora, which would ensure there's a consistent supply available for exchange. The pilot did identify an important economic consideration. With crates purchased at $5 each, the financial viability of the model becomes quite apparent when compared against the recurring expense of single-use packaging. The economic incentive, coupled with the environmental benefits, demonstrate clear value in broader adoption of similar schemes by the agricultural sector. So the hospitality crates were deployed in 3 stages, initially rolling out to 6 venues with a batch of 100 crates. The initial crates were equipped with the barcodes, as previously mentioned, but with the barcode linking to an app-based system called Sortly. which allowed for the individual tracking of assets by allocating them to a location. For example, crate 26 is at venue A or is at Natoора's warehouse. Using the system like that did effectively track the crates, but it was also very time consuming, with each crate having to be scanned and allocated to the appropriate site individually. The added labour cost, combined with the annual cost of the system at over $500, was identified as being a likely barrier for its use by anyone wanting to roll out a similar program in the future. So we stopped using it after this first batch of crates was rolled out, and before rolling out the next batch. Instead, we adopted Natoора's existing process again of recording the crates delivered versus crates collected from each venue in a spreadsheet, which provided a weekly tally of crates outstanding for collection. A challenge that emerged during the initial crate deployment was in the additional work required of Natoора's packing team in having to manage basically 3 different packing systems during this early stage, with 6 venues on the new green crates. Some were receiving the original bulb crates and some still receiving boxes. Considering this, we decided to roll out the remainder of the crates in one hit. Although we placed the order for another 900 crates, but only 150 were available immediately, with the remainder only having arrived in late February. So the bulk of the hospitality crates have only just been rolled out in the first couple of weeks of March, but have received feedback from hospitality venues, and really it's affirmed the success of the scheme, revealing a clear preference for the crates by all of the hospitality venues who responded to the survey. This was primarily due to the waste savings compared to traditional boxes, both in the environmental benefit as well as time savings in removing the need for them to break down boxes at the end of the day for disposal. Participants also highlighted the ease of storage of the folding crates as a key benefit, with several venues also identifying their willingness to adapt their processes where needed to support sustainability projects, which we think is a very important learning for any supplier who may look to implement a similar program in the future, but is concerned about how it's likely to be received. So there was also some specific findings and advantages created by the scheme for Natoora. A key advantage of the hospitality crates identified by Natoора's drivers is their ability to fit into a van when it's full of orders. As mentioned previously, bulb crates which have been available for collection have had to be left behind due to a lack of space in the van at the start of a delivery run, often to be gone when returning later for collection. Whereas these folded hospitality crates can always be made to fit. Another advantage is that up to 20 of the folded crates can be placed on a hand trolley compared to only 5 of the old bulb crates, which reduces the time needed for collection of empty crates from venues where direct access isn't always possible. Natoora noted too that the unique green colour of the hospitality crates has made them easily identifiable when they have been used at hospitality venues for storage, and that the crates in general have been returned faster now that they're clearly identifiable as belonging to Natoora. Strength was also identified as an advantage of the crates over boxes, with one driver noting that the bottoms falling out of boxes isn't an uncommon occurrence, whereas this just isn't an issue with the crates. The cost of the crates is of note at $27 each. It's likely a limiting factor for organisations looking to roll out a similar scheme in future. There is other types of folding crates out there. We looked into quite a few others that are available secondhand for around $5, but they don't have the advantages of the unique colours of these ones or the same level of strength. So we repeated the waste auditing process after all of the crates had been rolled out to determine the overall waste savings of the project, and found that Natoора's crate use had increased from 31% of orders to 54%. This increase equates to a cardboard, wax cardboard and polystyrene waste reduction of 7.2 tonnes per year. The main limiting factor for greater waste reduction in the project was the supply of produce to Natoora through the Melbourne market, and the complexity of the market supply chain and diversity of suppliers within it in implementing a crate scheme as previously mentioned in that example. The observations of several stakeholders was that real change needs to come from an institutional level, and I think that's reinforced by these findings with Australia's wholesale markets and supermarkets having, the supermarkets in particular having immense buying power. That presents a significant opportunity for future interventions into the volume of packaging waste used in Australia's fresh produce supply chains. So as previously mentioned and mentioned by Beth, that through this project, we came across quite a lot of examples of farms who are really effectively operating with very little waste in their operations. We selected 4 of these farms as having unique characteristics or differences and developed case studies in an effort to present a wide range of examples to other farms or farmers in what can be done to minimise waste. I will note, however, that it was quite evident through this project that most small farms which we encountered are already doing a lot of work in trying to minimise waste, which in many cases makes financial sense as well as environmental. We're lucky to have 2 of those case study farms presenting today in Sunnybank and Fraser. All of the case studies will be included in the public project report, which brings me to my final slide. What's next? The Victoria Unboxed project will formally finish on the 29th of April. In the meantime, we're working to finalise a comprehensive project report which includes the case studies and practical tips for both farmers and hospitality venues to minimise waste. Once the report's finalised, it'll be made available through Sustain's website, but it will also be circulated to all of the attendees of this evening's webinar. So I'm now going to hand over to Mark, who's the operations manager at Natoora, to give us a bit of an overview of their effort towards minimising waste in the supply chain prior to this project. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Angus. That was great. And thank you to everyone joining tonight. It's really, really great and great to see, sort of how many people are very interested in something like this and care a lot about this stuff. But I think even just going through what Angus was saying, it's been really great to sort of relive the last 11 months, and I guess everything that we've done and we've gone through, and things that we didn't initially sort of expect would come out of this, and a lot of things that we've learned so far. So it's been really good. But yeah, as Angus said, to be honest, I'd sort of wear a fair amount of hats. I've been working for Natoora for about 2.5 years. Currently really focused on product and also communication. So we do like a weekly newsletter and Instagram and things like that. But then also working directly with all the sort of direct growers that we work with. And that goes a lot into not just necessarily placing orders every week, but also a lot of planning and forecasting and sort of crop planning and things like that as well. So, I think for us, it's important for us to sort of help develop markets for, let's say, for produce that might be, a little bit different than what you would see at a supermarket, and really sort of focus on flavor and things being grown the right way and whatnot. And I do apologize. I've got a little bit of a cold if there's some sniffles, but I'll try my best to minimize it. So yeah, I'll just sort of go through and tell you a little bit about Natoora. I guess just very briefly, Natoora was started about 20 years ago in the UK by Franco Fabini. And then about 6-7 years ago, Natoora sort of started to branch out into some other regions. I guess we sort of, up until a couple of weeks ago, we're sort of the newest region. We did just open up in a small capacity in Miami. But previously to Natoora Melbourne, we're a company called Northside Fruit and Veg, which was started by Kim Driver, who's the managing director. And I mean, I have to give him a lot of credit because he is really sort of the crate the crate godfather, I would say, especially for what we do, and have been using crates. But yeah, it was a very sort of natural partnership for us to come together with Natoora, which has essentially been for a longer time doing what we're doing on a smaller scale here. in Melbourne specifically, and just sort of realized that we needed to grow a bit to make more of an impact. And so that happened in November of 2022. So it's been a while now, which is crazy. But yeah, I guess a little bit more into Natoora. Really, the way that Natoora was started was really trying to find a solution to, I guess, lack of a better term, like getting away from supermarkets and getting away from this, this idea that everything when it comes to fresh produce should be available at all times, and there's a real lack of transparency of how things are grown, where things are coming from. It all really started with, Franco, who spent a lot of time in Europe, and eating a piece of fruit that was essentially directly from a grower, directly from a farmer's market, and it being delicious, and then eating something in New York City from a supermarket, and just couldn't understand why it just didn't have the same flavor, it didn't have the same freshness, and really sort of going down this path of figuring out how we could connect, chefs that were very passionate, and really wanted to be working with the best seasonal produce, and then growers that were doing these things and had been for a long time, or sort of just started to do this, but in very traditional methods. How could we sort of bridge that gap and get these produce, get that produce into chefs' hands? We'll go to the next slide, I guess, if that's all right. Yeah, so speaking a little bit more in depth, I guess the real thing for us is transparency in the way of talking about where we're sourcing things from, how things are grown, really getting quite deep into specific varieties of things, talking a lot about not necessarily things just being, quote unquote in season, but actually how things kind of, and how produce sort of shifts in their season, how flavors can actually change, how yields can change for different crops, and sort of breaking that down into a bit more of micro seasonality is what we call it. And we also use language that sort of helps to categorize this into early peak and late season produce. So really sort of following essentially a crop through that process of thinking about something kind of being a flower when it's first starting, and then being into sort of its peak flavor, peak availability, and then something when it becomes late season, and something to sort of really get on top of preserving for future seasons and when things aren't around as well. I guess one big thing we like to touch on as well is, I think there's a lot of great things that come with certifications and whatnot, but I think for us, what's really important is really getting to know and learn about growers and their climates and what they're doing, really getting to form relationships with them. We do work with a lot of growers that do have certifications, but we work with a lot that don't either. So I think for us, it's really getting to learn people's stories and being able to tell those stories to the chefs that we supply, and then hopefully, and I sort of know that a lot of time this does, but that gets passed on to people going into restaurants as well, and really getting people excited about where these things are coming from. Go to the next slide. Awesome. And then just talking about impact here. So we'll start with something brief, then I'll go a little bit more into crates as well. But so the impact report is something that Natoora has done pretty positive for the last 5-6 years, really putting sort of some data to, what we're actually doing, by working with growers that are really, conscious about taking care of their environments and soil health, and even communities that are working, essentially helping to even invest in some small farms as well. And so people can really get off the ground, because that can be a really big challenge for a lot of small growers, is even just the monetary value of infrastructure, just to even get started. So releasing that sort of an impact report every year. We haven't actually done one in Australia just yet. We've now changed it to a React report, which is a really cool sort of magazine. We've got one coming out on Biodiversity Day, which would be the second, just the 22nd of May. which is the second iteration of this. And this is sort of giving that back to growers that we work with. I'm really telling their story about sort of what they're seeing. A lot of it focused on climate change. So what they're seeing within how climate change is affecting what they do, how things are growing, how they're sort of trying to combat that, and things like that as well. I'm really sharing their story. So that's sort of specifically the impact report here. But then just going into the last part of that, and sort of what Angus was, or part of what Angus was talking about as well, is that as previously Northside Fruit and Veg, and now Natoora Melbourne, I've been using black crates for about 6 years now. And it's a pretty interesting story. But Kim Driver, who I was talking about before, actually just in the wholesale market, just saw them. They were just rubbish. People would receive garlic bulbs and flower bulbs from Scandinavian countries in those black crates, and then they would just get rid of them, which is really crazy to me because they're very rugged. So I have no idea how that would ever break down ever. But he just sort of saw them and just started to use them actually directly with farms, because previous to that, he was getting produce that was freshly washed, putting it into cardboard boxes and into vans. And like Angus was talking about with delivery drivers, a classic story of a bottom of a box falling out, which is sort of the worst nightmare when you're trying to move produce. So I realized that these black crates were actually perfect for freshly washed produce, because they've got holes in them that it would allow that to drain. And it just worked well. So that sort of a snowball effect, that started to work well for picking up produce direct from growers. And then that actually started to work well for deliveries as well, because they stack really nicely in the van. They were nice and hardy. They protected produce really well. And so that became, sort of a signature of what we did, was delivering in these crates. And there's something I was actually just thinking about as well when Angus was speaking, but, not only was it sort of a signature of what we were doing, but it actually, I think it was a part of the service that we offered. When you deliver someone in a cardboard box, they then have to go and get rid of it. Or we essentially now have delivered in a crate, and it's great for many reasons. But then we're also, committing to picking that crate up as well. So essentially, all that chefs are getting and all they need and all they want is the produce that's in that vessel. And then we'll make sure we take that back. So yeah, it's sort of a thing that's snowballed, and obviously it's great for growers. Most of the growers that we work with use black crates and really love using black crates. And then it was great to roll that out directly to customers as well, for many reasons. And yeah, we've always done it, or at least for the last 6-7 years. There are a lot of challenges, but I think that's been one of the really great things about this project, is Angus and I spending a lot of time sort of chatting and reflecting on, and I guess speaking with growers and with chefs that we supply about what some of these challenges are, why people might like these crates, why people might not like the crates. And then just having, to be honest, like having the support of Sustain and Sustainability Victoria to be able to go and make some of these changes and see if things what it would improve, if we could, get customers that prove usable option. Great. And I think for us as well, we've really helped to kind of develop some systems to help other people in other businesses sort of implement this. And not to, it's not like official yet, but I guess for us, well, for me, which is pretty cool, is actually just speaking with Stuart, who leads like our leads brand for Natoora globally. But he was actually talking about how the whole sort of company as Natoora is now looking into using crates across every region that they're in. And I mean, for me, that's something I never really dreamed of. And that could be very cool. So, I think for us, which is what's great, is, I mean, to be honest, we're not a massive supplier, but, I think it starts somewhere, and hopefully by making that impact and showing that it can work. And even when there's challenges, there's ways around them. And we can help people figure that out. It all starts somewhere, and I've got faith that this can really sort of expand to a lot of other suppliers and other industries as well. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And I know that we did have some feedback in some of the surveys.
Back to Beth.
Oh, sorry, Mark, you were just cutting out, so I think I jumped on top of you. I was just saying thank you to Mark, and just picking up on some of the feedback from some of the hospitality venues. Really pointing out that other industries, for example, the alcohol industry, be great if they got on board and moved to some kind of reusable packaging as well. So our next guest that we have with us is Fraser, co-manager at FarmRaiser, who's been one of our case studies, and is a small not-for-profit urban farm located in Melbourne, who is operating with very, very little packaging waste. So it's going to be really great to hear from Eve about what they're doing. Thank you, Eve.
Thanks, Beth. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I'll give you a little bit of a background on FarmRaiser before we get into stuff about waste. So we're, like Beth said, we're a 2-acre urban farm in the northeast of Melbourne on Wurundjeri country, in Belfield, which is one of those little micro suburbs tucked between Heidelberg Heights and Ivanhoe. We grow seasonal veggies at a commercial level, but also work with our community and the neighbouring Waratah Special Developmental School. So we rent the land off the State Education Department and work with the students from Waratah to educate them and do work experience around growing veggies and stuff like that. And they have quite a range of physical and intellectual disabilities. Being adaptable and accommodating and accessible is one of our key things. We have a shop on site and community volunteer days every week where people come and work on the farm, mostly about social isolation, working together and learning about veggies rather than being productive. But so we spend 4 days a week doing commercial farming and maybe a full day every week working with our community. I can't actually remember what I put on the slide, so maybe I'll see what I'm actually talking about. There's just a bit of an overview of what we look like from above. So it's 2 old school footy ovals, basically, but the site's never been built on, which we're very lucky to have found in an urban area. So like I mentioned, we work with the students from Waratah. That's a key function, really, to provide support for young people with disabilities, to get outside and learn where their food comes from, and to gain some experience in kind of working conditions. And then sorry, I can't remember. What were the other 2 things? You switch back for a second. And then growing and selling veggies and flowers at a commercial scale. So to restaurants, grocery stores, veggie box programs, through our own on-site shop, and to resellers. And then like I said, targeting social isolation through our volunteering program. Okay, again, I've kind of ticked off a few of these already. So our time on the farm is divided between lots of different stuff, but weekly classes with the students, corporate volunteering as well, which is a new one that we're kicking off this year, wholesale and retail, one-on-one disability support work, which is also something that's beginning this year, where we as horticulturalists are working one-on-one with people from our community funded by the NDIS to provide them with a meaningful experience and something that it will be valued by theirs and our community, and food relief through the school and through our online site shop, and then yeah, community working bees and stuff like that. I feel like I can flick through a few of these. But yeah, most of our, we're a charity and a not-for-profit. Most of our income, almost all of our income comes through sales. So we kind of operate more as a social enterprise than a typical charity. And our wages and on-site costs are ideally, when possible, paid for by ourselves. Cool. So this is what we're here for. So I don't know. I don't think Angus really talks through what the Unboxed project has done for us. But basically, so we use these blue tubs that are pictured here, as well as the crates that Natoora used. We, as a small business and as a small organisation, I think from the get-go, it really allowed us to examine the systems that we wanted to put in place and make decisions that we really weren't going to invest in like non-sustainable plasticky things and whatnot. So we went for the crates right from the beginning, in partnership with Ceres, who are one of our main buyers. So that right from the start allowed us to not. We've never had to do wax boxes, styrofoam, and cardboard boxes. We went straight for those bulb crates. And then another decision that we made, which was in addition to that, which I feel like is maybe less common and a bit more difficult with bigger businesses, is that we invested in these blue tubs, which I think would probably be the equivalent of the green crates, the restaurant crates that Natoora has gone for. We decided to go for these because not only is it reducing the waste that we produce, like boxes and whatever, but it also reduces our food waste significantly, and reduces the food waste for our restaurants or our customers. So we found that a lot of veggies, particularly the fragile veggies that we tend to grow as a kind of urban farm where our supply chains are really short, we grow lots of things like basil, coriander, leafy greens, herbs and stuff that can be quite damaged by how windy it gets in cool rooms. Like the movement of air really like strips the moisture out of stuff, and reduces quality. So we've opted for these blue tubs, which again, they're quite expensive, but they last forever. We had, I think, maybe 40 to begin with, and then Angus and co have kindly given us another, I think it was 30 or so, wasn't it, Angus? Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so that's like almost doubled our capacity to take this to our customers, which is fantastic. And so we got it just in time for supplying the Australian Open, one of our restaurants at the Australian Open, with a metric ton, literally, of salad mix. So these were looking back and forth between the Australian Open and us twice a week, and meant that not a single bit of waste was produced in that whole process, and that it increases, rather than wrapping salad mix in plastic where it gets quite steamy and slimy quickly. Our salad mix lasts almost 2 weeks, still like crisp as in these things in a cool room. It's fantastic. So yeah, I think as the benefits of being a small organisation compared to Natoora or compared to some of the larger farms that these guys will be working with, I think allows for those snappy decisions even when we don't have a huge amount of money to back it up. Yeah, what else? Oh yeah, and then so in terms of other packaging, it's incredibly limited. We like I said, black crates and blue tubs are our mainstay. We mostly sell in bulk. We don't package things like salad mix at all. We don't wrap herbs in plastic. We do in presenting, like in our direct to public sales, we use these kind of compostable elements. So yeah, compostable punnets, paper bags, brown paper flower wrapping. We've recently moved away from using stickers to using an embosser, which is fun. Which, I don't know, these things are all quite small, but it adds up. And then, yeah, we do use styrofoam for people who don't participate in our blue tub exchange. But all of those styrofoams we've never really bought one. We just salvage them from series and mostly from broccoli producers and give them a wash and a sterilize and pop them back into use. And yeah, the only things that we really produce that produce through waste in our system would be rubber bands, which also often make their way back to us. And then in our stocks, so buying things in from other producers and from Epping, from the big markets, yeah, the guys at Natoora were saying. So that's really our only waste that we produce in terms of our packaging. Yeah, so challenges, this is a big one. I mean, we're a very small organization, like I said. We don't have a lot of money. We already, struggle to pay our own wages, let alone invest in big projects like this. So yeah, small scale agriculture in general is barely viable. And yeah, so investment from projects like the Unboxed is really cool. I think these systemic changes wouldn't happen really without it. Yeah, I guess because we don't sell with packaging and we never have, it's difficult to quantify what we've lost or our, how different our finances would be if we'd started with these plastic or with packaging. So we have been told by quite a few of our customers that they would buy more stuff or buy more salad bits or more herbs if they came in sleeves, plastic sleeves, or if we pre-packaged it in plastic. And that's just not something we're willing to do. And this is, unverified, but I suspect that by not doing the packaging ourselves, we probably save the money anyway on labor. Labor's more expensive than plastic, which is a shame. But so yeah. And then yeah, really on a small scale, we've created these systems. So with our suppliers, or with the people we supply, like cafes and people who are local to us, we've kind of got the power to suggest joining our system of crates and blue tubs. But yeah, creating change on a scale like Natoora is kind of a bit mind-boggling. And I think tackling the big markets would definitely be a real game changer, because I think that's, at least in our system, where a lot of the waste comes from, or is imported waste from other bigger systems. Yeah, so the future. I think for now we're our packaging, or the scale at which our system is working is good for us. We don't run out of crates, we don't run out of blue tubs, so that's really great. Now, we used to run out of blue tubs, $3. But then yeah, so in other areas of agriculture, there's definitely a lot of waste. Things that we try and reduce. The seedling trays that people use in nurseries, a lot of that stuff is technically single use. We use it until it dissolves into nothing and we can no longer use it anymore, or it risks putting microplastics in our soil. So yeah, agriculture has a long way to go, even in the regen small ag sector, to be low to no waste. But I think, yeah, it's always bottom up. It's never top down, even though it maybe should be top down. But I think a lot of small, like you said, and a lot of small farms are already tackling that because it makes sense environmentally and economically. Is that it? Did I have another slide? I can't remember. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, there we go. And you can find us. Yeah, come and say hi at this one. Very nice.
Thank you so much, Eve. Really appreciate it.
Sorry, it was a bit rambling.
All good. We got the point, and it was really great to see all the initiatives that you've been doing to reduce waste in your supply chain. We're now going to change to, I guess, a different type of farming. We have Terry Emselle with us from Sunnybank Sunnybank Farm, Ballarat. Terry is a multi-generational family farmer in Burrumbeet, Victoria. And I will now pass to Terry. Just make sure you're off. I'll just make sure you're off mute, Terry. Oh, there we go.
All right, thank you, Beth, and welcome everybody. Thanks for coming along. We're, as you said, a multi-generational family farm, and our sort of journey that I've been involved in, it's my son-in-law's family farm, and obviously my daughter and son-in-law live there, and they're going through a generational change out there and some different ideas on the way that they'd like to farm, and a bit more focus on regenerative agriculture and caring for the soil and caring for the planet, and how we leave the farm to future generations in a better condition than the way that we found it. So we have some Angus cattle, some first cross ewes, primarily for fat lambs and their meat. And 3 or 4 years ago, we introduced some pasture raised chickens for their eggs, and the driver for that was more as a regenerative tool for the soil, spreading some fertilizer out there in a way that was cost effective and in fact had a return on investment in terms of selling those eggs. And it's been an interesting journey, learning about the process and the complexities of raising chickens, which for someone who'd raised backyard chickens all their life was not aware in the slightest of how complex it is to do these things on a larger scale. At the moment, we have about, I think it's about 1,700 chickens at the minute, and they just roam in a pasture. It's nice that we see these photos where it's nice and green. I can assure you it's not green out there at the moment, but we spend a lot of effort on their new health and nutrition. Obviously that affects the egg quality, and so that's our sort of little journey, I guess, into how we got into the egg business. Was really more of a focus on how we regenerate the soil on the farm, and where we might start with doing that. I've been working out there now full-time for about 12 months or so, and apart from fixing things that are broken, my job primarily is making things work more efficiently, and look at how we reduce our costs and generally become as efficient as we can with some of the things that we do. And we've done a lot of things around our egg production with automation of certain things. Spend less time out in the paddock with the chickens and more time doing other things. The journey down the path of using plastic crates and plastic egg trays sort of started because our customers kept wanting to give us back the boxes that we deliver them in and the trays and things, but we can't really reuse any of that stuff. Eggs, obviously, even though they're washed and sterilised and go through that process, they get broken, and they're fairly fragile, and so we can't really reuse any of that packaging. So I went out and sort of started to have a look to see what we could actually do from a reusable point of view, and realised that we were actually already doing it, because we bring the eggs back from the paddocks in plastic crates with plastic trays. And I'm not aware of anyone else that actually does it, but it seemed logical for us then to go, well, hang on a minute, why can't we actually send them out to a customer that way? And it was quite an interesting sort of discussion with talking to some of our cafes and things about it. And, some of them are super on board with the idea. They like anything they can do to limit waste is great. Others were, no, we've always done it this way. A box has 180 eggs in it, and that's what we get, and that's what we want. Whereas to use our space effectively, we end up with 240 eggs in a crate. And some of them had trouble figuring that out and how that was going to work within their business. So they elected to stay with cardboard boxes and cardboard trays, which creates a little bit of an issue for us in juggling what's packed into what, and having the right things available at the right time for customers who, sometimes want more or less each week. But we worked our way through that fairly much. We only have a relatively small client base. We know our customers pretty well. We know what's going on, and we can work our way around that. But we are a commercial enterprise, and really everything was, had to be economically viable for us. So we went into that in a fair bit of detail. And when we figured out that the return investment on a plastic crate was only about 15 uses, it made an awful lot of sense to us to start going down that path, because the crates that we've got and the new ones that we've got through Angus and the Unboxed process get used hundreds and hundreds of times. So it's really a no-brainer in that sense. And it also saves us about 1.3 kilos of cardboard for every box that goes out. When we work that out, it's about 1.5 tonne a year of cardboard. Our crates are also collapsible, fold down for storage, stackable because they fit in our delivery van better that way, and storage space in any cafe, as Natoora has already talked about, is at a premium in any cool room space at a cafe, or any storage space outside the cool room as well. So those sort of things were our finding through our discussions with our customers, and so it just sort of started to evolve, I guess, down that path as being beneficial for everyone. So that's really where we went with those things. We do sell lamb direct to consumers in cardboard boxes, but the challenge for us with that is getting the crates back. We just haven't found a way to make that an efficient way to actually get a return on a crate, because those go directly to households, not so much to our cafes, although that is changing as we go. Now, the challenges, I guess, in the egg business is that we do need to wash and disinfect the trays and the crates on every use. We've got a process that's okay for us, but there are ways and machinery to wash and sterilize and all that sort of stuff, but it's just not economically viable for the volumes that we do. So that's all done by hand, all done by me actually, and we wash and prep all those things on return. We do have discussions with customers from time to time about asking them, when they do break something or fill it with something else and it gets filthy, if they can just give it a wash for us rather than sending it back full of other rubbish, but it works pretty well. A couple of other things that we have come across with the crates, the way we use them, because they're open. Some customers are concerned about cross-contamination in cool rooms. They prefer to be in a cardboard box where it's totally sealed and enclosed. And the other thing is that the crates are just a little bit less, more easily damaged, I guess, in a crate. The plastic trays are a bit harder than the soft cardboard trays. And obviously if you drop something on top of them, eggs break, and that creates a little bit of an issue. But most of the customers that use the crates are, quite happy to adapt again around their practices. This cool room with this photo, those, crates are normally just stacked in there, and they've actually stolen one of ours and put it up on the shelf up there with something else in it. But and that is a periodical problem, but we don't really track the crates, and we don't see any great loss of the numbers that we have. And most of our customers, again, are pretty keen to be part of what we're trying to do in minimizing that waste and minimizing the stuff that they've got to get rid of. So that's really been our journey down into that sort of removing that cardboard waste was, sort of driven more by economics and looking at how we handle things better, how they stack better in our cool room, and how we fit more stuff in our cool room space, as well as that for our customers. And that's our little journey down the egg into eggs, pasture-raised eggs, and again, it all started more with the regen farming and caring for the soil, and just sort of progressed through, I guess, a natural sort of progression through into how do we have the minimal impact on the environment, as we move our product out to customers. And that's about it from me.
Great. Thank you so much, Terry. Really appreciate your time. And I think from what we've come across, your reusable egg to customers is quite unique. So really hoping from this project, we can share this kind of innovation to other egg farmers working with different hospitality venues. So we're now going to just jump a little bit of a change of, track and hear from David from, gosh, what's David's last name? So it's changed my, David Leonard from Sustainability Victoria. So David is a capabilities lead at Sustainability Victoria, and will share an overview of the Circular Economies Fund that has supported this project. So I will now pass it to David. Thank you. Oh, we're just on mute, David. I'm just gonna try and help you unmute.
Yep, there we go.
There we go. Got it.
Thank you, Beth. And thank you, Anna, for inviting me. This is very exciting project. I've come in the middle of this, I think. This community fund has been going for about 3 years, and it's an important platform for Sustainability Victoria. So I should mention, by the way, I'm sitting here on Aboriginal land, so I'm sitting here on the traditional lands of the Burrumbeet people of Kulin Nation. So I'd just like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge that our First Nations people have the world's longest sustainable economy, and Sustainability Victoria is a state government agency, and it's been funded to do all things sustainable in Victoria, and that's changed over 30 years. We've just relaunched our 3-year strategic plan, and the circular economy is very much central to that. That's strongly supported by the government. And this particular project, Unboxed, was one of over 60 projects that we funded, as seed funding to get some ideas about how we could help Victoria transition to a circular economy. So it's something that we all have to move to. It's not just something the government, pulls a lever and says we're going to a circular economy. It's to do with moving away from a linear approach of just, use and dispose to looking at waste as a resource. So, we talk about the R ladder about not just recycling, but refusing, reusing, reducing, all different ways that we can think about how do we stop just consuming and start using the resources that are in the system. So the aim is to not just say, no, don't do this, don't do this. It's about actually fostering, boosting the economy. And for people like our previous presenters, for people to start going, hey, this is a better way of doing things. This actually makes sense. It makes good business sense. And it's also, it's supported. There's a license by the Victorian people to say, yeah, we want to look at different ways of handling our packaging and reducing waste, reducing consumerism to allow the economy. So maybe move to the next slide. The number of projects we had two different streams. Some were statewide and some were locally produced. Were different. There were a whole variety of projects. So some focused on things like tool libraries, where we're talking about a sharing economy. Some focused on taking care of organic waste, so composting programs. We funded programs that dealt with unique streams of waste. So we had a group called Soap Aid that recover soap left in hotels and repackage that, cleanse it, and also we had different programs that work with food relief by taking food that supermarkets were going to dispose of and turning them into nutritious community lunches. So there's sort of a wide look, and the central theme about all this was that this was initiatives that were taken by the community that we wanted to fund. So it wasn't sort of government saying this should be done this way. It was community pitching ideas to us and saying this should be done. So something like Unboxed, you go, well, that's a bit of a no-brainer, surely. But as we've seen from this presentation, a lot of work goes into making a simple idea come to fruition. So there's a whole heap of different experiments you had to try. Like I heard about how you're using, the barcode system to start off, and which are the best crates to use. So there's a bit of trial and error involved. And it's important to capture that knowledge so that we can help other groups and other initiatives move forward and help us transition to the circular economy. Next slide, thanks, Beth. Yeah. So just a couple of examples of some of the groups that I've gone and visited and spoken to. The Community Alliance for Waste Reduction cause, they started a whole system of community action. They started working bees. So they wanted to get to encourage composting, but the important thing was to establish community ownership. And in a lot of the projects that we funded, it wasn't just about something that was, good for the environment, which of course is important, but also it had to have social outcomes. So there was a real community inclusion aspect to a lot of these projects. So CAUSE was all about getting communities mobilized to set up their own composting hubs so that then people were more motivated to use it and take their organic waste there. The Darley Neighbourhood House set up a repair cafe, and this is not unique. There are many repair cafes around. What they learned was that the repair cafe was actually a unique experience. So it created a sense of community. It wasn't just about people coming in and giving broken items a further life. it was about creating a great experience for people in the community to come together and meet and learn about fixing things. I'll go to the next slide, Beth. So the fact we talk about my role as a capability lead in terms of this community fund was to say, well, what are some of the learnings? And this is what's been transferred into today's webinar, because we want to continue the momentum of projects like this beyond initial seed funding by government, and also increase the scale so that other groups might want to take initiatives like this and carry the ball forward. So we kind of see ourselves a bit of a catalyst of change. And so the final slide there. Yeah, so I think how Sustainability Victoria sees itself is that government should be kind of working in partnership with community initiatives. We shouldn't be trying to tell people what to do or how to do it. We don't want to create dependence on government funding, but then nor do we want to be too far out and to sort of create alienation. So our aim is to create sort of a partnership by not only providing some resources, but also looking at the capability aspect as well. So beyond this project as a funding stream, the community fund will also be coming out with a capability kit, and we've been doing a lot of work getting the different groups together to talk and exchange ideas as well, so that the ideas and the knowledge isn't lost.
Great. Thank you, David. And I have a quick question for you before we move on to other questions. Is there going to be any other funding streams like this coming up or open?
There are other funding streams, not in the community fund. There are, and it's on our website. There is more work being done with circular economy. I think at this stage it's more focus on industry. But there's definitely in our 3-year strategic plan, there is an emphasis to do community funding, but nothing coming up in the immediate future.
Yeah, great. So perhaps I think there might be some different industries here from the farming sector. So perhaps open stream might have something of interest to them.
And also we have been funding council. So councils often, some of that money trickles through councils as well with a council fund. So there's, sometimes, social enterprise starts as a community group and becomes larger and becomes a business.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone sticking around. We have gone a little bit over what I had said, and we've still got a few minutes left for some panel questions. I've got a few questions or comments already in the chat, and if anyone has anything else, please put them in now. I might just start with some of the comments first and then move to the questions. So and I think in hindsight we had I guess a smaller group of audience members, and it would have been really great to have a bit more of an interactive discussion. So next time I think we just do the old school Zoom for this kind of thing. We had a few comments from Kirsty Bishop Fox. Loving these crates not only reduce packaging waste, but are better because they protect the produce, whereas cardboard boxes can fall apart. Also comment, the eggs in reusable are great. As a consumer, I get my eggs in a system like that. I bring my egg carton and refill them at the full pantry in Croydon, except the trays are in cardboard box, but the crates are even better again. And there's a question from Kirsty around broccoli. Just asking that they believe that generally broccoli is transported in polystyrene because it stores better. How does broccoli store in crates? Might pass this over to Mark or Eve, or both of you. We don't grow broccoli, but yeah, we've
seen that it still comes in polystyrene. That's the kind of polystyrene that we take back into our system and reuse. But yeah, what about you, Mark? Did you get it in code?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. This is something we sort of like initially looked at when the project was first starting. Because the reason things are in polystyrene, obviously it's insulated, but it's also because it holds crushed ice. Obviously where a crate would not do that too well. it'd get pretty wet in the warehouse. But I think there's two things. I mean, we looked at a few different options that sort of come from the seafood industry, of some more reusable options. And it's actually something that we're starting to see with more seafood wholesalers. Like, it's not the perfect substitute for broccoli, but using like essentially similar tubs that you use, Eve, with fish, and then that gets recycled back to the supplier, and then obviously washed and sanitized. There were some similar things like that, and some ones that were insulated. I think the biggest thing that went with that was kind of cost on them. But I think the biggest answer to this for what we do is kind of, we like to look at things as harvesting on demand. So essentially, when we're thinking about how long I can hold broccoli in a crate, I would say maybe 2 to 3 days comfortably, and then I'm making sure that I have growers, or the same grower that is able to harvest me, by looking at how much broccoli I'm selling a week, say 50 kilos for 3 days, and then I'll get another delivery of 50 kilos again. So, I think that's when we talk about sort of systematic change, that's where a lot of this big packaging, where that comes in, is when, you have these massive commercial conventional farms that, it's all about yield. So it's all about harvesting a lot all at once and then holding it in a cool room, versus actually trying to other things when you need them, if that makes sense. It will create some complexities to do that, but obviously for us at the scale that we're at, that's how we go about it. We do, I mean, to be completely honest, we do get broccoli in polystyrene to the market, but like all the broccolini, and when we do get broccoli directly from growers, we get it in crates, and we just make sure that we're ordering what we need and what we're going to sell for 2 to 3 days, and then we make sure that we get a top up from there. And that's essentially, when I say harvested on demand, harvested that morning or the day before it, and put it into a cool room. So I think that's one of the best ways around it for us.
Great, thank you, Mark. We've also got a question which might not be able to be answered, but maybe Mark, you might have some insights. So Marina's question was, could there be funding for the nutritional value of food grown seasonally and picked at peak flavour? Also, soil quality, soil biome contributing to nutritional benefits of food grown more traditionally. Have you come across any of that research in your work that like kind of is quantifying those benefits?
I'm going to give the best answer I can, and to be honest, I think he would probably be great at answering some of this as well. But like, I think for us, we always sort of talk about flavor when it comes to quantifying things, which is funny because that's not necessarily a quantifiable thing, but I think it is a lot more than just like, I think it helps to give people like an idea of why something grown in sustainable systems tastes better, if that makes sense. It all kind of filters in. And a lot of times, what we sort of, if you get a bit more into the nitty gritty, is like, essentially nutrition in soil is flavor and minerals and vitamins and things like that, which is also then, transferred into what you're eating. And, I always find as well, when I'm pretty lucky because I've got pretty good access to it, but like when I eat, veg, like very fresh veg that's grown the right way, is just like how much better I feel than eating veg from the supermarket. It's kind of crazy, like to actually feel that like almost immediate response to it. But yeah, I mean, I can't really answer if there could be funding for sort of nutritional value and stuff. I would say there should be, and I hope there is, and I think that's the type of stuff that, you know, I think is going to help get the general public, you know, a bit more excited about, you know, maybe why they should be spending a little bit more money, or, you know, on produce, or why they should be eating tomatoes for a lot of tomatoes for 3 months out of the year, and then probably not eating tomatoes for the rest of the year, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I would absolutely love to see. But yeah, I think for us, we just really try and filter that back into, like, the reason things taste good is, like, here's a picture of where it's grown. Like, it makes sense why that is delicious, because, like, look at this. I could show you a farm of something that doesn't taste good, and it probably would make sense why it doesn't taste good, if that makes sense. So
I have a brief answer to that. There's actually, as of this week, money coming through from the Lord Mayor's Charitable Fund to invest in food hubs and food systems to make produce like ours more accessible to people on low incomes and experiencing food insecurity. So that's like a pilot project that's happening this year, doing some experiments with the Community Grocer, which is a fantastic organisation. So yeah, essentially, yes, there is funding, limited and you know, experimental, but there is funding essentially for better nutritional, food with better nutritional value, like ours, rather than buying just from conventional markets, which is what they typically do.
Great, thank you, Eve. Now, I will acknowledge that it's 6:30, and I don't want to keep you away from your evening activities. I'm just going to read out a few final comments, and we could hang around for 5 minutes if anyone has any burning questions. But I just wanted to make a comment that Marina said, yes, they taste good because they're good for you. And Kirsty Bishop Fox said there is a company called Planet Protector who reclaim wool to use in boxes instead of polystyrene, but I'm not sure how they will go in a crate. Might be worth looking into if you haven't heard of them, as they are trying to replace polystyrene. And another comment, so great to hear the funding is supporting nutrition, not just any old food. And a final question, and this one might be the final one for the evening. But if anyone needs to leave, please do. Thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate taking your time, and yeah, continue being in communication with us if you're working on similar things, and we'll be sharing a report, which hopefully, as David has said, can build some capacity and capability and share the learnings of this to reduce packaging waste in these short fresh produce supply chains. And so the last question is, when is it planned to completely phase out cardboard boxes and permanently put in place the reusable crates? So maybe Angus, you might be able to just share a little bit about what's some background on that from maybe a government level.
Certainly. And Mark, feel free to add anything if you see fit. But I think there's certainly some big challenges with that. I suppose as I mentioned, there's a whole level around 50% of Australia's produce is supplied through the market. And those supply chains are very difficult to influence from this level. At this point, there's no government policy that I've come across that is, I guess, drawing a line in the sand and saying we won't have any further packaging of this type. And that's probably both. That would, I suppose, be a huge undertaking, but also in that we're possibly not there yet in having the alternatives available for every single type of produce, and it will be a complete redesign of some of those supply chains. So I suppose the short answer is there is no date at this point. But in the meantime, as we've seen and shared a couple of case studies, there is a lot of small farms doing their absolute best to reduce their waste, as well as other businesses like Natoora and hospitality venues who are demonstrating a preference for these kinds of systems. But yeah, right now there is no answer, unfortunately.
Great, thank you. I think that might bring us to the end of tonight's session. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and have a great evening.
Thanks, Beth.
And I'm sorry we
Thanks,
didn't have
everyone.
an active chat function. I would have loved to have had some interaction with the audience, because I believe there's some people passionate out there.
Thanks,
Well, I guess
everyone.
I would just say as well, I don't know if it's like publicly shared, but I can share my contact information if anyone ever has any questions or anything, wants to come by the warehouse in Collingwood, always welcome. So yeah, I'm always an open book. Might be busy at times, but always get back to you as quickly as I can.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
See you on Thursday.
Thank you so much. I forgot to say thank you to our panelists. So really appreciate all of your time tonight. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Beth.
Thanks.
And I can see there's still a few people in here, and I can allow you to talk if you do want to make a comment, Kirsty and Sarah. But you just have to raise your hand, I think, for me to do that. Oh, yeah, there we go. We've got
I just gave access to everyone.
oh, you just did. Oh, you did it before me. Okay, great. So if you want to say anything, Kirsty, we can
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
I don't have a lot more to say, but thank you. I'm not in the industry. I'm with Zero Waste Victoria, and we're very passionate about reducing waste. And I'm glad the timing aligned to be able to sit in and listen to this, because we look at it at the consumer level. But I'm also very conscious there's a lot more waste behind the scenes that most consumers don't even consider. And I know broccoli is one of those things that I have this mixed relationship with, because it often comes in the polystyrene, but I buy it loose.
Yeah.
It's probably interesting to note that our big executive officer was on ABC Melbourne last night talking about this project and packaging waste more generally, and a lot of the questions that came through were around the consumer side of waste, obviously the plastic on cucumbers and those sorts of things. So it's interesting to see that there is some community interest in it out there.
Oh, there is, and cucumbers are tricky. I understand why they put cucumbers into plastic, but I never buy cucumbers in plastic. But I make sure I use my cucumbers, and I know it's that double-edged sword. I have been actually asked, I don't know if you know, like how come some cucumbers are in plastic and they say they last longer and some aren't? I don't know the answers or not. I just choose not to buy the plastic, but that's the way it is. So and I've done my experiments. I damn know it's true.
It's actually it's a really good comment, Kirsty. It's essentially continental cucumbers are the ones that are in plastic, and then Lebanese cucumbers aren't. I don't actually know the reason why, but I think weirdly enough that kind of filters back into this like systematic thing where people just don't want to change. People just don't want to rethink what's been done for how many years, right? It's just like that cucumber's in plastic, that one's not. That's what we're gonna do, instead of being like, why is it in plastic? Why is that one in plastic and the other one's not? To my knowledge, with those two varieties, it doesn't change anything to be stored that way. So, yeah, and I mean, I think that's the biggest thing we've sort of found with like the big wholesale market. It's a very similar thing. They're just, I think I've seen one supplier in there using crates, but it's just, people can't fathom it. They're just like, why would you do that? We put them in boxes. That's what we do. Instead of even kind of taking a step back and sort of thinking about it. But it's been interesting. The more we've talked to people, we work with a few people direct now from the market. It doesn't go through the market, like they're sort of a supplier in the market, but then they now use crates with us. is actually something that happened as of yesterday, which is pretty cool. So sort of making some headway, but yeah, it's tough sometimes. You know, people just don't want to think about something different, you know, that they've been doing for how many ever years. It might be a multi-generational business, and they've done it for that many years, generation to generations, in boxes. So that's just what they do, you know.
It surprised me when you said that
tough one.
Some of them didn't want to change to the crates because it just changed the numbers and they just couldn't get their head around that. Like, that just blows my mind. Like, to me, it's, you know, I had this conversation about something a bit different, but it's not that different. You know, it's not about the survival of the fittest. It's about survival of the most adaptive. And we need to adapt. And some of the adaptations, they're quite small, but they're seemingly big. Like, you remember the uproar when people had to pay for